this afternoon joining us for a conversation on artificial intelligence and the humanities, organized by the Center for Ideas and Society. My name is Jeanette Kohl. I'm the center's co-director and PI of its Being Human initiative, and it's a great pleasure to host today's event. Our conversation here, I should say that at the beginning, is part of a series that we've started last year on what it means being human in the age of AI. We already had a panel discussion with the engineers and people from computer science last spring on artificial intelligence and its impact on higher education. But as you all know, things are moving fast. And if today's event bears a similar title, it does not mean that we will be talking about the same thing. I think the pace of these developments actually is quite mind-boggling, and it sometimes feels like we're in a loop of playing catch-up with an AI industry constantly outpacing us. That said, apart from larger philosophical implications of this, the current cultural paradigm shift, and its potentially, I guess, dehumanizing effects, we at the university are, of course, interested in how to react, what to do, how to face ethical dilemmas for us as educators, for our students, although I have a hunch that the moral doubts weigh heavier on the teacher's side. So what does, for example, and I think it's going to be addressed to a degree today, what does cheating mean in the age of AI? Is ChatGPT cheat GPT? How does the future of the written essay look like? How do we implement best practice policies into our teaching? So today's session, with the title AI in the Humanities, Practical Tools and Ethical Challenges, offers an overview of AI tools and their practical applications, highlighting the ethical challenges they bring to knowledge production and the classroom. And I'm very excited to have two colleagues with us who bring a very solid experience in that field and will navigate us through a difficult terrain that for many of us, and that certainly includes me, is still in large parts a terra incognita. So our two guests are Professor Christoph Zeller from Vanderbilt University in Nashville, who's our presenter, and Professor Goldberry Long from UC Riverside, who has agreed to respond and moderate. So let me extend a very warm thank you to the both of you. Thanks for coming. Just two sentences on housekeeping. After my brief intro, Christoph Zeller will give his PowerPoint presentation, then Goldberry Long will respond and start a conversation, and we will transition then into a Q&A open to all. So please use the raise hand function on Zoom so that we can moderate accordingly. Closed captions are available. So it falls to me, and it's a pleasure to introduce our two guests. Christoph Zeller is professor of German and European studies and an award-winning scholar and teacher. He has taught as a DAAD lecturer in Poland and was a fellow of the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation at the University of Washington in Seattle. Trained as a literary scholar and historian at the University of Stuttgart, he has received numerous international fellowships and awards. His scholarly work is embedded in literature, media, and culture, with an emphasis on philosophical concepts and their impact on individuals and groups, including fiction and nonfiction, art and aesthetics, politics, and people. His essays have appeared in leading journals such as Poetica, the German Review, Yazel, Arcadia, German Studies Review, and many others. He's currently working on a book on avant-garde art and literature called Dada Economy, the German Inflation and the Evolution of Avant-Garde Art. Goldberry Long is an associate professor of teaching in our UCR's creative writing department, a member of the Academy of Distinguished Teaching, and a recipient of the Innovative Teaching Award. Goldberry is the author of the novel Juniper Tree Burning, and her essays and stories have appeared in Colorado Review, New Orleans Review, LitHub, The Rumpus, and Poetry International, among others. An expert in shaping writing practice to maximize creativity, Her primary research interest is the cognitive processes of creativity and the use of writing to foster creative problem-solving capacity in STEM students. She developed a writing program in or for the UCR School of Medicine, teaching the creative potential and generative power of writing as a tool of self-reflection to students that are mainly exposed to scientific and practical knowledge. She was also, I should mention this, recently interviewed for an article with the title Communicating with Students in the Age of AI in the Chronicle of Higher Education. So welcome again, and thank you for sharing your thoughts on an important topic that is, I guess, at the heart of what we all do at a university: learning, thinking, writing. And with that, I'm handing it over to Christoph. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I should start by saying that I'm not a specialist. I'm not a professional in the area. I'm an amateur that approaches AI with great interest, and perhaps that's the advantage that I have here. I'm an early adopter. I had to find out how things work, what the limits of AI are, and what I can do with it. And just to underscore that a little bit, when we learned about the release of AI in the fall of 2022, I thought for a brief moment that my next book project is done, that I can stop writing right here, but far from it. So it's very sobering to have used AI just to find out what its limitations are. I've tested it in the classroom at several occasions. I had one class that was designed to work with AI heavily, and yeah, it gets you so far only, but the technology is improving fast, and it's great that we have that conversation. And I see my role today as someone who shares, shows, and engages in a conversation that of course needs to be continued. So by no means would I claim that I know everything. It's very likely that some of you know quite a bit more than I do. But let's see what we can come up with. I would also like to encourage you, even during my presentation, if you have an urgent question, Goldberry promised to support me in this. Please put it in the blog. Let's just see if I can jump right in and go into detail. So I will share my screen now and switch over to PowerPoint and start from here. So to give you an overview, I start with a few definitions, not all too much. It's not going to be too technical. Then I would like to give you an overview of AI tools that I used, and then discuss also when and where to use AI, at what occasions did I use it or wish to use it. I have certainly not used it at all the occasions that I think it can be used, but yeah, again, it's evolving so quickly that it's sometimes good to just simply exchange what we know, what we have. I will spend quite some time on prompt design, because I think that's the key for a successful use of AI. And I would definitely like to discuss as many of the ethical challenges that AI poses currently. And of course, this is all done from the perspective of a humanities professor. So about the definitions, first of all, I think it's important to understand that we're dealing with a specific, not a general artificial intelligence. That is the future. There's several corporations that work on completing the job and create something like a general artificial intelligence, perhaps even based on a model that mimics the human brain, but we're not there, by far not. So what we're dealing with are chatbots, refined, very fast chatbots. It's a better version, if you wish, of a autocomplete system that you have for years now on Google or on your phone with help of Siri. We're dealing that all of that is based on a large language model, LLM. You heard so much of it. It's basically the training material that that the chat bot is based on. All of that is based on probability. So the answers that you get tend to be the median answers, that which is most likely to be the answer, which also means, and that's posing one of the ethical challenges here, which also means that you get average answers, right? They always tend to be right in the middle. It's what makes current models still largely quite mediocre in terms of outcome, the quality of the writing. It's getting better though, fast. So in the last 2 years, much has changed. What does GPT mean in ChatGPT? It means generative, pre-trained transformer. Generative because it creates something, new text namely. It is pre-trained because it has to be fed first a large amount of data and material. I believe ChatGPT 3.0, the first that was released to the public, used something around 300 billion words, if I'm not mistaken. It sounds like very high, but I may be wrong. It was a very large amount, definitely, and it stopped, the training material stopped in the year 2021. Transformer is a more technical term that I will not go too much into detail, but the architecture of the model allows for fast and parallel processing. So just if you have a simple sentence structure, from that structure, that ChatGPT can derive whether, you know, whether the answer would be in form of a question or, you know, what follows a certain word, a noun or a verb. So it does that now all in parallel, not in sequence. And that makes it fast and usable for us. Then the difference between AI assistant and AI agent I deem important. So an AI assistant is what you already use with your phone, Siri, Alexa, are AI assistants, and AI agents. That's the big hype that we currently see. Those are trained roles on AI chat systems, such as those are really just examples: blog image administrator or YouTube content creator, a marketing specialist, or a German studies professor, etc. You can actually train your own AI agent if you have access to ChatGPT or any other AI tool. Let's see. So I want to give you an overview of what you can use, but then I switch to some of the tools. I think, and those are examples that where I have used AI too. I think those are the best examples. So I use AI for summaries of documents and books. If I just want to have a quick overview, that's what I would do. If you can upload a book or link a website to your chatbot, that's what these chatbots can do within seconds or sometimes minutes if it's a larger document, but it's done very fast and useful. Sometimes if it's a larger paper, it can give you an overview. It's basically like the abstract that you often read before you start reading an essay. That's what you would get. It can help you develop new courses. So I often, not often is maybe too much, but certainly 7, 8 courses that I developed in the last 2 years. I have used ChatGPT to get a first idea, and based on that idea, I developed a course, and I would keep up to maybe a third of the original structure or suggestions that I got. That doesn't sound like much, but it really speeds up the process if you compare to start writing from scratch. I would use it for brainstorming, for conference papers, panel discussions, or even book chapters. Here too, it may not lead to much in the end, but it's initiating a process. You could do a quantitative textual analysis, which might be interesting for the digital humanities. The first attempts to use computers in our field date back to the 1960s, perhaps earlier. But I'm from Stuttgart. It's a technical university, and that's actually where those methods were developed, and they had, basement size computers at that time, only to have an output that would tell you how many times the word table was used in Kafka's, I don't know, the castle. And that doesn't sound like very much, but you can do a lot today with comparisons of texts just to find out, did Goethe use a specific word as much as Rousseau? It might be interesting to what you do with that, and it can be done now within seconds and minutes, which I find amazing. You can actually you can create slides, the text for slides. You can also create the images for slides. And I think I've never done it, but I have colleagues who reported back that basically you can do entire presentations based on your input and refine it later. So it can be of big help. You can draft letters of recommendation. Sorry for the spelling here. I left that one letter in there accidentally. You can draft research projects and grant proposals. I have used ChatGPT for administrative and time-intensive tasks that could be emails, which I have rarely done, only if it was a very general email. But I had to do a program evaluation. I will show you how that works and explain a little bit once we go to ChatGPT in a moment. It can be used to deciphering handwritings, which I find amazing because it's a very time-intensive task to read old handwriting. And it turns out that that AI is actually quite good in doing that. I envision refined catalog searches. That means the initial steps of doing research in our field. I envision this to change over the next years. So instead of you doing precise catalog searches, and I hope maybe that a librarian is here who can tell us perhaps whether that's possible or not, or even conceivable. But I would hope, that in the future you might say something like, find everything that was published in the last 5 years on Kafka, and it would put out the catalog resources that you have available. If that were possible, I would love that. It would save us a lot of time. I haven't seen it yet, but I wish this would happen. So those are just some examples. I will switch now to give you some ideas. So what you see here is a ChatGPT interface. That's how it looks like. You pay, and that's an important factor here too. You would have to pay $20 a month to use it. And you have an option here with this little arrow button to choose from a variety of models. The free version is ChatGPT 3.5. The ChatGPT 4.0 is much better, much more refined, also in writing. OpenAI, the parent company that released ChatGPT, has acquired permissions from other companies, or even acquired some of the tools themselves that you can use. And you see little buttons here on underneath the chat field. If you click that, create images, help me write, and so on, you would get links to implemented, more refined sources like Write for Me, which is an even better tool for writing, or an image generator, or Canva, which will help you come up with slides that look different from a PowerPoint slide that I'm using here. Again, I haven't used it very much, but it can be done. And I just wanted to give you an example of what could be done. Let me see. I should have that still in my. No, I don't have that right here. Give me just a second. Yeah, that is a prepared version of it. So recently I was tasked by our administration to evaluate each of our courses in the program in German and Russian and East European studies in order to define whether it fits a category of a new core curriculum that the College of Arts and Science at Vanderbilt University will release or has released recently. And I had a choice to make. As chair of the department, I could either have written all my colleagues asking them to evaluate their own courses and let me know what kind of core capacities of that new core curriculum will be covered, which I anticipated will take many months and many emails to go back and forth. Or I can do it all myself with help of AI, and that's what I did. So I came up with a prompt that is very specific and very long, as you can see. And I uploaded then the syllabi that I got. You have to make sure that no name is included in there because you want to protect the privacy of your colleagues, of course. So you can upload here with the little with that little button, attach files. Any kind of files that are accepted. PDF files work really well, Word files, of course, and Excel, anything that is included into the Microsoft Office suite works really well. So this is my prompt that I came up with. Analyze the attached syllabus for a college course, European Studies 2202, European Politics and EU Institutions, and write a 250-word paragraph explaining how this course fulfills the learning objectives of the college's core capacity, systematic and structural thinking. And then I quote from that. I don't have to go into detail. And then I have certain learning outcomes that I list. Learning outcomes for this capacity are, first, form a hypothesis or thesis about important problems or solutions. Two, employ diverse approaches to address problems with critical reasoning, and so on, until I summarize and go into specifics here. Consider all 4 learning outcomes and explain how EUS 2201 will meet these learning outcomes. Relate to these learning outcomes by comparing the rationale for the course, its methods, assignments, projects, final papers, etc. Avoid redundancy. So you have to give very specific advice, is maybe to general instructions on what the style of writing has to be and looks like, and write in a clear and concise style. Omit a summary paragraph or sentence. That's something that AIs like to do because that's typically done. Again, there's that tendency to go with the highest probability. So the AI would conclude that that is likely to be demanded from it. I didn't like it. I didn't need it. And I also wanted to abbreviate it a little bit by saying LO instead of learning outcomes. And then I read somewhere, and I don't know if that's true or not, because I don't see much of a difference, that if you have a polite phrase like thank you, you would get a better outcome. It sounds very much like superstition, but who knows? Maybe it's true. So I got a paragraph. That paragraph is not so much longer than my initial prompt. You might say, well, how did you save time? I did because all I had to do was refine the prompt, exchange the title of my course, and the rest stayed pretty much the same. I had that done for 2 different learning outcomes that were important for us out of 5. So that was it. That was what I had to do. I was done with that task within 2 days. So it was a bit of work, but that's pretty good for 20 courses that I had to evaluate. I admit that I did not initially say that it was done with help of AI. I got compliments for being so clear and precise with my submissions here, like almost no one else, but then I had to reveal it. And of course, that's tapping into that area where people say, if you have to remain authentic and honest with your work. So admitting that you used AI is a good thing. So this is one example of an administrative task that I completed with help of AI. I have colleagues, I heard a young colleague who said what he does is he goes to conferences and has an Excel sheet in which he puts in the names of everyone that he meets at conferences with a little note that says something like what kind of professor they are, what field they are in, and follow up on a certain conversation topic that you engaged in with this colleague. And then he had an AI go through this Excel sheet and come up with standard emails. Um, I thought it was awful. I don't think I would do this. But he's young, you know, and pragmatic, grows up with that stuff and says he thinks that's what the future will bring and look like, that we receive emails that were created by an AI, although the intention is still authentic. And that's what he did. Um, there are certain things I don't think that I will see the day where I would feel comfortable doing this. Yeah, things change quickly. I might be wrong, you know, in a few years I might have changed my mind, but as of now, I'm not doing this. I want to give you an overview of some AI tools that I find very, very helpful, and they're included in this recording, obviously, but also in my uh, PowerPoint presentation. So if you're interested in it, look those up um, and try them out. Some I just included in the list for completeness sake and to just give you an overview of the variety of tools that you can use. I have not used them all, but there are some that I heavily use. And the first one that I use heavily is DeepL. It's a translating program. It's, I think, the best on the market. It's far superior to Google Translate. There's a free version that you can use, and there is a different option that you can use it for, namely DeepL Write. It's basically offering you alternatives to your own writing, and you can train this AI so that it understands whether you are an American or an British English speaker, or that you have a preference for certain words that you like over others. So it will remember this, and it works either from a website, or you can use a downloadable tool that I have here. That's how it looks like. I don't know. You, I will not do it right now. You can basically put in text. I can actually, let me do this. Let me try something here. So I can use this prompt. And if I wanted to have that prompt translated, I just paste it here. It will take a few seconds. And here we are. That's the German translation of this prompt. Actually, it needed to be awake, and it does that sometimes. It's an oddity that I have to do it twice the first time I use it. So this is how quickly it's done. Of course, it's up to you to check and see how correct that is, how useful it is. But that's a tool that I often use. If you would go to DeepL Write, you could do the same and have basically the AI come up with grammatical or vocabulary choices. You see here it has a tendency to still use the British English version. You can change that here. It will remember it and make suggestions how to improve that. I use that actually quite frequently in my emails, and it has to do that, you know, with my status as a non-native speaker of English. I'm still sometimes insecure, I admit, about my English and want to have a confirmation, and that's a great tool to use it. It has.
You
Yeah.
have a question in the chat.
Okay. You read it out loud to me.
Yes. What has your experience been when editing attached files and managing the versioning process in different iterations?
Actually, I mean, I never had a problem with that. I thought it was a great tool because it reads, it understands. So that the more context that you give, I come to that when it comes to prompt writing, the more context that you provide, the better it is. I also realize it's already 2:31, so we're almost half an hour in, and to give us some time, I should probably speed up the process a little bit to give you that overview and then come to prompt writing, where I will come back to attaching files one more time. So we leave it there for a moment. I give you just a brief overview. That's not good. Okay, here we go. So TypingMind is known for giving you a large variety of pre-trained agents. That's what I shared with you earlier. So if you want to write from a perspective of a certain personality, there is basically knowledge background already added and trained. So they are trained on that background. So a pro coder, a block image generator, and so on. I haven't used it, so I cannot tell you precisely how good it is. Then this one is super interesting. I think it has become very popular, Otter AI, among our students here at Vanderbilt. It's an AI meeting assistant that can record meetings and then spits out a summary of the meeting and the findings. It has sometimes a little bit, catchy promises like condense a 1-hour meeting into 30 seconds. We all wish sometimes it's the other way around, that our meetings are just 30 seconds and we have a 1-hour summary to go into detail. But that's what our students use quite frequently. It's pretty amazing. So we have done that in some meetings too, as long as colleagues are okay having the meeting recorded. And this one I thought was fascinating. I have not done it, but I read about it. 11 Labs, that's actually a German AI that creates with your own voice an AI bot or chatbot that speaks with your voice that you can use for recordings and, for example, to translate a text into a podcast, right? With your voice in it. It's a synthetic voice, so you don't have to speak the entire podcast, but it just does that with your voice. A little creepy, but that's what can happen, what they can do. Then there is Perplexity, which is an AI-based search engine. This is one of my favorite tools. Asking, for example, how was Syria impacted by the Arab Spring? It would come up with an answer different from Google. It would not give you like ranked answers, but just one precise answer that you can read, and it gives you, and that's the fascinating part for Humanities, it gives you footnotes here and tells you where this information comes from, and you can click on it and confirm it. So it's a wonderful way to have information that is provided to you and at the same time have insight into the sources of information. So that's something that I use frequently. I heard that some of my colleagues like this tool very much. I haven't used it yet. Welcome to Notebook LM. Notebook LM. It works almost a little bit like a planner. You can take notes. It's a tool that is incredibly good and strong to upload files and have summaries done better than ChatGPT, I heard. And we have at Vanderbilt a specific gimmick. We have a very strong computer science department, and they came up very early on with their own version of a ChatGPT, actually an AI tool that is Vanderbilt specific, that allows you to choose from a variety of different tools, chatbots here. The default chatbot is Claude by a company called Anthropic, which is known to have or provide the best tool for writing. So that's the one that is on here. Mistral, it's a French AI, one of the few non-American AIs that is very good in, that's often used by engineers and by scientists because it's very good in specificity. It's very precise. It has a higher rate of more precise output than ChatGPT. And let me tell you this, and that's the warning that comes with the use of AI. The truth that you get is a linguistic truth. So sentences that are produced by ChatGPT are correct. They are true in that they are logical and have a sentence structure that you can rely on being precise, being correct, being true in that sense. But content is not its strength. So they get better, but what is known as hallucinations, it's still very common. That means whatever you produce, you basically are responsible for the output before you submit it somewhere. You have to read it. And that's not always the case. Unfortunately, I had some students last semester that have used ChatGPT in order to come up with essays. I will tell you more about it in a moment. And they forgot basically to read what they actually submitted to me, and it was so obvious that they used it and cheated while they were doing this. So that is, I cannot see if there are any comments, but I think there were some. So Goldberry, if you would read it out loud.
There's only a comment remarking that someone else loves Otter AI.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah, again, that's one of the most favorite tools here on campus with us. I'm going back now to my presentation, and I have 4 slides that deal with prompt design. It's perhaps a little much, so I will try to be a little bit more streamlined. So be clear, unlike in everyday conversation, be as direct as possible, say clearly and without hesitation what it is that you have to say. So for example, summarize the attached text and share it in its 3 main arguments.
Now you have a question. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Would you prefer to finish the guides for prompt design, or would you prefer and postpone this question, or would you like to answer it now?
If that has to do with prompt design, that question, maybe you can hold off for a moment before I finish it.
Okay.
Okay. Define the perspective. So from which the answer will be given. So that means define your role. For example, write a blog post defining the humanities as a dean of a major public university. So that would be something that you almost by necessity have to give to be clear about the context. So the role needs to be defined in your prompt. And the context then has to be even more refined. For example, take the same prompt and turn it into something else. Write a blog post for a widely circulated blog about higher education from the perspective of a dean of one of the largest public universities in the US, defending the humanities as a key to personal growth and professional success. So that is giving information about the intention that you have, the blog posts, in what field it is done, and of course the role that is written from. Hold on. Okay. Use specific questions. So you can actually help that prompt to understand better what your intentions are if you add just some questions. So it could be that you write that specific prompt and then in addition add some questions. So do that. It will help it understand the context even better. And then provide examples. So if you have a file or something that shows what you want to do and have it for, use those examples. That is of great help. Use source text and other materials by uploading Word files, PDF files, or images, and ask the AI to analyze and reference these source materials in specific ways. So that's all related to uploads that you do. And I will say something about copyright issues and that stuff in just a second. What you should also consider or could consider is a step-by-step process. It's known to trigger better results if you, either with numbers or without numbers, prompt an AI to go step by step. In this case, I came up with this. Identify the key components of successful presentation. Then explain the steps for structuring a topic. Then give can't read my own stuff here because it's then give tips on effective presentation and speaking techniques. Apply these insights to the following topic of my presentation. Ask for keywords related to the topic. Work through each slide one by one. If the topic is not clear enough for a single slide, make 3 suggestions and ask up to twice if something is missing or should be made clearer. Then move on to the next slide. So you see by this kind of prompt that is actually sometimes useful to maintain, maybe in the end, something like a library with good prompts that you can recycle, that you can use, rewrite. It's of course no easy task, because how would you find them in an easy way? But it's a start, and you become more versed in coming up with your own prompts on the spot. Yeah, and take advantage of multimodal AI capabilities. So you can translate stuff into different media, into different genres. So translate an Excel spreadsheet into a graph if you want to visualize numbers. A screenshot or image, a screenshot is always an image, into a spreadsheet, or a handwriting image into a Word file, and so on. So that's where AI is really fantastic, does the work within seconds. And then I came up with a detailed, refined prompt for best results. And that was basically what I did here. I was asked to provide a blurb for this event. The blurb wasn't very long, and my prompt was actually much longer than the results. So you might wonder, why did you do that? Because you might have as well come up with a blurb, a short blurb within seconds. I doubt it, because even small text, even short text, require a lot of thinking, and I knew already what I wanted and needed, and so I just wrote it down what I needed, and it was faster than the other way around. Yeah, I will not, for time's sake, I will not go into this and show the results to you. They were posted somewhere on your websites, but instead look into your questions. I will stop sharing for a moment so I can actually access your questions. Okay. So there's a question about students cheating. I will say something about that in just a second. Let me see if there's another question about prompt writing.
That was the one question there.
Okay. Yeah, I see. Okay. All right, and let me address that right away. So I had a couple of students. So one student, for an essay, copied a portion of the prompt that was given to the student into a chatbot, and the chatbot came up with the response. Part of that prompt was originally to compare texts of a 4-week sequence that we read and discussed in class, and write a paper. So compare these two papers. The student did not copy that portion that said from the last weeks, or maybe he did, but did not provide the text. So the AI came up with an essay comparing 2 random texts that had nothing to do with my class. And it was written, of course, in flawless, grammatically correct English. It was also written in the tone and style of AI, meaning you will see that if the more you use it, it has often a little bit of a know-it-all, grandiose style that says something like, as we think in the humanities, blah, blah, blah. A student would never write like that. You will see immediately that that's not written by a student. Nevertheless, it forced me to write an email in response to that, clearly defining why that student cheated. I abstained from submitting it to the Honors Council in our case because I don't find that very productive. But had that student actually write his own paper with his own words, and subtracted then some of the grade. It was an embarrassing moment. A friend of his used AI too, and that was even funnier because I can really see it happening. He called his buddy and said, "Hey, I'm done with my work already." And his friend said, "All right, how did you do that? Let me find out more about it." And he said, "Well, why don't you use AI?" And halfway through his essay, which was an awful essay, all of a sudden it switched and it became this flawless, grammatically correct essay. Right? So I had an essay that was half composed by an AI and half not. And the student didn't even bother to look over this and smooth it out, the transition. It was all there. And so it was quite embarrassing. And yes, it's a real problem. It becomes a real problem. It's one of the biggest, I think, issues that we will face in the humanities, namely the issue that essays, any written assignment can be done so quickly and also so well that if it's done well, if the prompt is written in a good way. For example, write an essay from the perspective of a freshman student. You can even go so far as to say, include some, spelling errors in it. It would do that. So it's very hard for us to say whether cheating was actually happening or not. There are some
So-
AIs that specialize in testing and checking if it was written by an AI, but they only give you a certain percentage, an accuracy percentage. It's 70% cheating or not.
Christoph,
Yeah, go ahead.
there was one part of the question that I think is quite interesting. Michelle had asked specifically if what you said to the student and how you generated a conversation about it. Because, of course, accusing someone of cheating is never comfortable, but how did you approach that conversation?
So Vanderbilt has a general AI policy that basically states that the use of AI is permitted unless otherwise specified by the instructor of a course. Most of my colleagues have a clause in their syllabus now for 1.5 years at least that says AI use is not permitted unless otherwise instructed. So turning this around. That was the case here as well. So after that happened, halfway into the course, I had to have that conversation. That was actually the second conversation I had. One I had at the beginning of the course. The second I needed to have for students to understand that I'm not stupid, basically, that it's easy to call them out and to let them know, hey, I'm doing my job long enough now to know, whether you wrote this or not. And that was actually quite productive. Telling them, however, where they can use AI and where I actually support it for brainstorming purposes or a draft version of something or gathering ideas or a summary of a book. That's okay. I don't think that we can maintain these walls up and these gates closed and say you cannot do this. They already do it, right? But then drawing a line at that point where I say you can use it for all those things, for all those tasks, but not use it for writing an essay, that's hard. That's the tricky thing, and you have to basically stay on top of it and remind students that you're well aware whether or not they do cheat, right? And yes, I did have these two students come to my office hour and say, this is what happened. It is embarrassing. They did not deny it. There was no question. It was so clear. It was so obvious. Yes, they felt bad, but the truth is, I want them to become better writers. That was the goal. And as soon as they understood it, they realized, okay, they cut a corner, and maybe writing doesn't mean that much to them, but it does mean something to me. And so I had them do that work. And
So
they were,
I have a
yeah.
couple of responses, if I may. The first is I did something. I like using ChatGPT to make. First of all, I like to use it as a conversational partner. So when I'm trying to work through an idea, I will ask it to be my conversational partner, and I will produce ideas. So I just wanted to offer that up. And then often when I've worked through the conversation, if I have two different ideas, I might ask it to produce a difference table where it can create a table that compares the two ideas and the different components of the two ideas to help me organize my thoughts. But aside from that, I asked ChatGPT once to analyze a student's work and give me a table of reasons why it was or was not written by ChatGPT. And it did a really exceptional job of giving me reasons that so you can use ChatGPT for that as well.
Yeah.
And my final thought is actually I want to defer to you because I know you're not done with your slides, so I can mention that later if we still have time. I think that's all of the questions that
Okay.
were in the chat.
And let me go back and switch now to, yeah, I do actually have some more slides and share. 1 second. Here we go. So ethical challenges. Those are the main ones that I identified. There's way more. I have listed some. So the unauthorized use of copyrighted works for AI training. There's several lawsuits pending. They are going on for years now. They will probably go on for more years to come. The most famous one includes the New York Times. Certain companies like Wikipedia grant permission to use their stuff, or did that basically in advance. They say they abstain from suing, but others are less generous. So it's a real issue. It's a real issue. We were in a similar situation once music tools came up. So Spotify was involved in a lot of lawsuits, which resulted in compensation for artists. And we might see something here as well. There are several colleagues of mine who also jumped on that class action lawsuit because their books were used as training material for the initial version of ChatGPT. So that's pending, and it's a real problem. So be cautious, particularly when you upload material to ChatGPT to analyze something. It will now more and more, it switches more and more to implementing material that was just generated or that was just uploaded, right? The generation of content that closely mimics copyrighted material, that's another issue, but it really goes in the same direction because sometimes the stuff looks so close to copyrighted material that it's hard to say where the boundary is. What the difference is. The lack of attribution or compensation for original creators. Yeah, so that there is no money paid. Of course, that's connected to these copyright issues and potential copyright infringement in AI-generated outputs. Finally, the removal or alteration of copyright management information. So these are all copyright-related issues. It's a real problem, and it's ongoing. What is at stake in the many copyright cases that have been filed since AI was made available? So it's not just intellectual property rights and financial compensation. It's also sometimes simply the attribution and control. You don't want your stuff necessarily to be the stuff that feeds an AI. You might consider certain limits for the use of your material, but once it's out of your hand and used, there's no returning anymore. It's going to be very interesting for the future of AI development. So however these cases will be decided, it will either limit or open up new avenues also revenue avenues for AI and how it is going to use. These cases also set a legal precedent for the future. So you may have heard, for example, that the European Union came up with much stricter AI laws, the use of AI, and that includes particularly property rights, which now critics say would hamper AI development and restrict it too much. You know, innovation would be stifled by the strict laws in the EU. On the other hand, you know, it's a much more ethical use, much more ethically aware use than what is happening here in the US. Other ethical challenges that I find important, namely one is, for example, environmental impact. How will the use of AI affect our environment? What is the future energy use of AI? And will the use of AI undermine progress in reducing greenhouse gas emissions? If you compare just these two charts here, which I have produced with help of AI, then you will understand why. Namely, a Google search uses way less energy than an AI query. And if you use AI several times a day and people use it more and more, you can easily understand that we are on the road. It's just the beginning of undermining everything that we save in greenhouse gas emissions, that the reduction will see a reversal very soon if that continues, if that trend continues. Several companies, particularly Google and Microsoft, have considered or signed already contracts to use nuclear energy. Google has signed on with a company called, I think, Kairos Power. Yes, Kairos Power, to create new modular nuclear power plants that are much smaller and cheaper than what we know currently. That's about to come, you know, until the year 2035. Microsoft is in negotiations or has signed already a contract over 1.6 billion to use 3 Mile Island to use that energy to power power servers that use AI for those who use AI. So it's a massive peak in energy that is needed for the future of our society. Then we already discussed, you know, where do we draw the line between authorized use of AI and cheating in our classrooms? What impact will that have on our students? Will that mean that our students will lose that skill or never be trained in that skill to write an essay, a coherent thought that they develop over several pages? Is that something of the past? We're currently confronted with the idea that reading becomes a skill that is not very popular any longer, reading a book, because it requires a lot of attention. Our attention span is much shorter, at least in the younger generation. There might be other things that my generation does not as well, and that is multitasking. That's why I cannot respond to blog entries while I'm talking. It's very hard for me to read and talk at the same time. So those are issues to consider. And just to give you a number that is attached to it, there's not much out there. So the numbers that I have here are from mid-2023. So it's over a year old, but at that time, 56% of students have used AI to complete assignments or exams in an unauthorized way, I should say. And it's interesting that roughly a quarter of all students, well, not a fifth of all students, 21% think it's not cheating, and 25% think have a very neutral attitude. So a little more than half thinks, yes, of course it is cheating. these numbers have probably changed, and that will depend on you, on us, and how strictly we reinforce AI policies in the classroom. I have only a brief list of other ethical challenges, and then we can definitely switch to conversation mode. The production or creation of misinformation is a huge problem. It will undermine and influence elections in the future. The last case that was in the news was a presidential election in Romania that was canceled by the Supreme Court in Romania because of Russian influence. There was sufficient evidence. The two main candidates that were supposed to be then competing in a runoff election were both sponsored by Putin's Russia and their secret services. This undermines, of course, also the belief in democracy in general. Even if this election in Romania was canceled, people lose trust in elections in general, period, and that will only get worse, I'm pretty sure. The creation of feedback loops as AI communicates with AI. The media theorist Matthew Kirschenbaum called that the text apocalypse that we're seeing in the future. We will be bombarded with scam and with all kinds of stuff that is produced and thrown at us. We will no longer be part of the conversation, he argues, because it's taken over by AIs. That sounds maybe a little bit too dramatic, too apocalyptic for you, but it's an interesting article that he wrote and published in The Atlantic mid last year. We will certainly see the loss of jobs, and not only blue-collar jobs, but more and more white-collar jobs as well. And it's questionable whether new technologies will produce and create significant new jobs in the according fields. We see that particularly in the creative fields like graphic design, copy text writers, advertisements, and so on. So there's a lot of jobs that are on the brink of either disappearing, or perhaps, some say, well, those jobs who will be kept will be tremendously more productive because of those new tools. And then we see a potential to increasing inequality through limited access to technology. So those of us who have access, that's all of us that are here currently, have a different relationship to AI than the large swath of our society. And lastly, that's connected to the production of misinformation. We will see if AI is left to engineers and technicians only, we will see a reinforcement of biases if we don't have a solid conversation on biases as they are communicated. And why I'm adding this here is that I'm afraid that the humanities are left out of a conversation that for too long was left only to engineers and technology specialists, even though we are the ones who have expertise in large language models, because that's really what we're doing for centuries. And I wish that we had more of a say of what goes into an AI to trigger a certain output. That's all I have for now. I'll be happy to answer your questions if you have questions and we have time. So thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Christoph. There are so many things to say. I see that some people had to leave at 1 or have to leave right now. But I think amongst us, we should start a conversation. If we have questions, I'd certainly encourage that. And some questions might be about, I mean, if I may just start, might be about the classroom or the syllabi and how to handle this. So more on a pragmatic level, really, because I taught last year grad seminar where I didn't have any problems because the questions were so specific, or maybe just the group was not really, didn't have that affinity to AI. Undergrad seminar, I would say about 1/4, 1/5 was using AI visibly to me. But I thought that was a rather low percentage. And
How many students did you have?
I could see that they've been working with it and they've tried to make it. So it was not just mostly, for the most part, not just using it without ever looking at it again and just submitting it. So I think I'm just beginning to run into those problems with my classes. And I'm wondering, how do you implement, what do you say in your syllabus? Would you recommend what you say in your syllabus, both of you, Goldberry and Christoph? Do you have a proven recipe? If you know, I could say, okay, it's completely forbidden. I don't want that. I don't tolerate it, which kind of, I'm a hard ass sometimes. I tend to do things like that, but I don't want to do it in this case because I think there's potential. And I learned today that there is potential if there's a responsible usage of AI. So I'm hoping for recommendations.
Christoph, would you like to go first?
Yeah. So I came up with a pretty refined, lengthy AI policy that I'm afraid nobody reads, really. So it really depends on what I say in class. That's the key. I taught a very interesting new class this semester that will be standard here for Vanderbilt students. It's a freshman class that's called Being Human. Resonates with the title that you have to for this event. And in this class, we discussed canonical and also philosophical, lots of philosophical texts on the question of what it means to being human. And the class was set up in a way that students actually got really old-fashioned readers, like copied material. It was a low-tech class where we didn't use any technology in the classroom. So it was a strict no phone, no laptop out in the classroom. And that was very helpful. So in the classroom. However, students still had to submit their material on our learning website. And I'm afraid that there was even a higher percentage of those that I didn't catch that submitted these short reading responses that were 1 or 2 paragraphs long. That's like the perfect stuff. You upload a text, you know, that has maybe 10, 12 pages and say, can you write a summary from the perspective of a freshman student and so on. It would be close to impossible if they alter the text a little bit for me to understand or see whether it was written by an AI or not. In many cases, I suspected it, but I was not in a position to start that conversation because if I'm wrong, it's really awful. And then it becomes the main topic of that class that you're the AI police, you know, that discusses constantly whether it was cheating or not. So I just simply made clear this does not help you if you use AI. If you really want to learn, you abstain from it. So it's basically a voluntary contract, a social contract that I had them sign in their minds.
So I have 2 responses to that. And the first is a short-term response, and the second is a longer-term response. The short-term response is curricular change, in the sense that, for example, and this isn't a change for me, except for now my students do the bulk of their writing in the classroom. But in my class, my students write 1 essay many times. They're required to do at least 4 revisions. And they have to write a self-assessment with each revision where they talk about what they changed and why they changed it and how it improved what they wrote. And so that kind of process makes it very difficult for them to use AI. At the same time, I give them, there's a lot of research that giving students more freedom in choosing their topic gives them more investment in getting the topic right. So a question to ask is, how do we make the students want to have ownership over their writing? How do we make them, because for them, I think that they are always doing a cost-benefit analysis. And this is more true of our students who are first generation students who have no, a lot of them have no financial resources. A lot of them are working one job or two jobs. A lot of them are commuting hours. Their time is extremely limited, and they have to do a cost benefit analysis. And if they see no benefit in doing the writing, and they have classes that are for their majors that are very crucial, they may decide it is worth it to risk this cheating because I see no benefit to it. So there are two curricular concerns that we have to address. One is, how can I position my students so that they want to take ownership and so that it is difficult for them to cheat, such as doing multiple revisions and articulating their reasons for their revisions, which is actually good writing pedagogy anyway. And the second is, how can I make the students see that this is valuable, and not just by telling them it's valuable, but positioning them to feel it's valuable, which I guess is actually same point. And the second thing I would say is, in the long run, I think we have to completely reimagine what writing is for. What I observe when I look at Christoph's use cases is that most of the purposes he uses writing for uses AI for, in terms of writing, is for pro forma communication that a robot could do. And if, for example, letters of recommendation, anybody who's a faculty member knows that you save the letters and then you populate them with the new student's name, if it's the same class and they're a similar student. So if that's a robot, and whether AI does it or you do it, it's pro forma work. The same with, analyses of class objectives or something like that. So we need to ask ourselves, what can we ask our students to do with writing that a robot could not do? And I use robot casually, but to make the point. But what I mean is, if a machine could do it, why are we asking a student to do it? So we have to ask urgently what writing can achieve, what a human being can achieve with writing that a robot can't. And I don't think it's form. The reason we're having so many problems is because students are using it to ensure perfect presentation. They have been educated to think that the presentation of the thought is more important than the thought itself. And I think we have to position writing to be a tool for thinking rather than a tool that needs to be assembled in a particular format to be presented elsewhere. So, for example, our concern with introduction, transition, conclusion, articulation, that obsession means that students think that's what matters. And that's what they're using AI for. If we instead say writing is for the development of thought, and when you write something down, it actually becomes easier to develop your thinking. And we actually look at the thinking rather than the form of the paper, then we are positioning writing to still have value, because otherwise it's not going to have value anymore because a robot could do it.
This was pretty much the best summary of the issues that we were facing here. And those are great ideas. So I couldn't agree more with you. That's why that list, it's true. I think there is not, I feel relieved to use an AI for tasks that I don't like to do, right? But creative writing is a different animal. It's an AI will always tend to be mediocre, whereas the innovative aspect of writing, the novelty of it, that is not something that an AI can ever produce. And that's why it is so problematic still to have an AI write a novel. It's not going to happen, at least not as of now. Maybe one day, perhaps, but
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
So all thinking is creative. I mean, from the perspective of cognitive psychology, creativity is defined as a novel, as an original, usable solution to a current problem. And the mechanism by which I write a novel the cognitive mechanisms are the same as my husband, who's a scientist, solving a problem in science. And I think that if we can help students to understand what's happening in their brains and why writing can facilitate that problem-solving capacity and make them understand it as that kind of a tool, then we will get somewhere. Because we all are going to need, the only thing we're going to be able to do that nobody else can is to come up with surprising, usable solutions. I hope. I mean, we may become obsolete in that respect as well.
Yeah, I'm wondering, so the way I've perceived American higher education, and also, you know, when our daughter was in middle school and high school, as from the position of an outsider who came late to this culture, was that language is very much understood as a means to an end. And the kind of provocative or playful or essayistic or, I don't know, the surplus of language has never been really foregrounded very much. As you said, it was very much about structure. How do you build a successful essay? But it was never about the fun, the art, the creative uniqueness of what language is, the phenomenal potential. All of this was not really addressed. And I think we are having a problem that comes from down the pipeline from much earlier. So we're dealing at the far end of things with something that's been instilled in our students practically, you know, for a long time already. And it seems like AI is confirming
I
that,
completely
that utilitarian approach to language.
I completely agree. And in fact, if you look at how students are positioned, to their relationship with rewriting begins with, from the onset, a test where they must perform writing perfectly and correctly the first time they try, which is a spelling test. And from then on, the emphasis is on, as close to possible, get it perfectly right on the first try, which is this insistence on form over content, which is why they give them formulas for taking essay exams, which is why when entrance exams like the SAT are graded, the graders spend 30 seconds per exam and they look for a certain level of diction. That's what they're looking for, because it's all about the performance of a certain level of expertise in crafting writing, but there's an indifference to thought. And there's a privileging, and it's no surprise in our culture that there's a privileging of external appearance over complex content. And I agree with you. It begins with play, with discovering the fun that is possible in working through language like a puzzle. But there's a lockstep curriculum that goes all the way through their entire education that's about do it as close to perfectly the first time you try to do it. And so if you can get a robot to do it perfectly the first time you try to do it, why not?
Right.
That's what they're supposed to do.
So let me confirm what you two just said from that class that I taught. That was originally a freshman writing class, right? Now it's a humanities class, but with a strong emphasis on writing. Now, I'm not an expert on teaching writing, but it struck me, since I live for so long now in the US, and it is still kind of bothers me tremendously that as writing is taught in high school, I have two teenage daughters who go through the process right now. It's tremendously formulaic. There's very little, very little freedom of choice. Just exactly what I like about writing, that you have variety, that you can choose, that's the creative process for me. And it's erased from the process, right? It's the opposite. So there is no more creativity that is demanded. So it was part of my job to show students that they have options, right? That they don't have to start an essay this way. They can also use 5 other ways. And so that's that's what I enjoy, what I personally enjoy about writing and what I try to pass on. I don't know if students perceived it as liberating, but it felt to me, I have to free them from the shackles of their high school education to like to get to the potential that they have. Most of them, many of them didn't even know, when I said, wow, that's actually quite a great paragraph, they heard that maybe for the first time that they have creative powers that they were unaware of. And so
Yeah.
this is amazing to give them that freedom. So that still can happen in the age of AI. So one simple tool that I suggest, because I see that many of my colleagues shy away from writing or written assignments altogether, and instead turn to oral exams or something at the end of a semester. That would be the worst case scenario, in my opinion. So I'd love to at least combine it. So you could do something like a confirmation session at the end. I don't want to call it exam, a conversation about their writing. So if it was written by an AI, they are in a bad position, to have that conversation with you. And so I think it might help that they know they will have to, whether they want to see it as a test or not, they have to basically show that they are responsible for their own writing, the text that they submitted. Yeah. So that could be one solution, one way to go about this. But I'm still a little helpless. I don't know in what direction we will go. This is all a big experiment, I'm afraid.
I was just participating in a class on AI in education, and I read a lot of papers about AI in education. And the most striking quality was they were already outdated. If they had been published before December 2024, they were outdated. And I think prognosticating at this point is completely impossible because things are changing so quickly that even the most informed position becomes obsolete within a month or two. And I think we are just along for the ride that the engineers created for us.
I think even for many of us scholars, it's going to be a challenge in the future to not use AI, to make that decision, intentional decision to skip AI in certain parts, and say, this needs to be written without help of AI.
Yes.
Now it becomes blurry in moments where you're going to Grammarly or to DeepL and have a spelling and grammar check. How much of that is AI? Obviously it is already. So, but it's tricky. It's very difficult ethically. We're on shaky ground, I think. Yeah.
Yep, I agree.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the big challenge is that before I listened to your presentation, to you and Goldberry, to your comments, I had not much of an idea. I mean, I knew ChatGPT as a concept out there, but I've been trying to avoid it. So for the reason that I already feel like I'm constantly behind. And whenever I read something in the newspaper, things have changed already again. So I've kind of pushed it away from me. Whereas when we want to work productively with our students who are, in my case, ahead of the curve, at least ahead of me, how to use AI creatively and honestly, and maybe in the ways that you outlined at the beginning, Christoph, like use it for brainstorming, use it for rewriting, for correcting, for fact check. I don't know. Use it for various building blocks that then lead to a text, but don't have the text being generated by AI only. That requires us to be very well informed and keep being very well informed. And that, I think, is a challenge, at least for a lot of folks in my generation, seems to be a challenge. I'm hoping that the younger professors and the younger teachers are going to be better at it. But for me, it's been a frustrating thing to see things move faster than I can or want to keep track of them. And that's not an excuse, or maybe it's in part an excuse as well. to not really delve deeper. But you know, the presentation and the discussion today have really encouraged me to look into some of those tools and learn what they are about, so that an informed conversation on my end with the students can happen at least.
One useful rule of thumb that I would offer students and anyone who's going to use AI is, if you wouldn't admit it, that you used it that way, then you probably shouldn't use it that way. Like, you know, so I would admit to using it to help us assemble our undergraduate external review, because everyone knows that that's a pain in the behind, you know, and everyone knows that a lot of it is just assembling facts. The second thing I would say is that I read somewhere in one of those multiplicity of papers on AI that you should treat AI like an extremely smart but extremely forgetful colleague who wants to be helpful but needs some guidance. So like, you have to think about what you actually want from them, and you have to remind them of who you are and what your goals are every time you talk to them, because they forget everything. And I think that that's, I would add to that, this extremely smart colleague oversteps their boundaries constantly. So you have to be very clear about boundaries, because they're not going to be clear about boundaries. So for example, the other day I was working on this paper and I knew the structure wasn't right, but I couldn't break out of my preconception of the structure. So I uploaded it and I said, I need help with the structure. I know the order of my ideas is not correct, but I can't figure out how to rearrange it. Please propose a better structuring of my words, but of my concepts, but do not change my writing. And because I don't want it touching my language. When it does that, it messes me up, because then I don't know what's mine and what's the chat's. But getting anything that you would ask a colleague to help you with is something that you could ask ChatGPT to help you with. My husband, who's an extremely early adopter, said to me one time, don't you go to your friends to have them read something and tell you why the organization is not working? And how is that different from asking AI, why is my organization not working? And so that's the second, I think. If the first thing is, I would not tell somebody I did this, so I better not do it. The second thing is, if I would ask somebody to do this for me, maybe I could ask ChatGPT to do it for me.
Yeah. Which also means that, unfortunately, that wonderfully social component to writing, you know, that you share stuff before it's published, that you get in touch, that you reach out. It's a very vulnerable moment, you know, when you give something out of hand that is not yet published. That's going to be gone for many people that use AI, because you don't have to ask a friend anymore. You may not expect to get the same sort of feedback, but it's going to be interesting how that will change. I don't know exactly where that will lead, right? But the flip side of all that, that these kind of utilitarian texts become, there's an abundance, a multitude of ways to get there. In turn, that means that human writing and creative writing becomes even the more valuable, right? And I don't know, rare, valuable. Yeah, it's interesting how that changes our relationship to text, and ultimately also to our way of thinking. You know, I don't know. I mean, that the whole process is compared to the introduction of tabulators, where people said people will lose the ability to do math with the head, and that may be true to a certain degree, but nobody is nobody cares anymore, you know, about those changes. There's still a multitude of ways where you need tabulators, I said earlier, calculators, of course. And so it's, I wonder, you know, if our fears will be erased in 20 years as naive, and we might end up at a very different place, a very different relationship to text.
Mm-hmm. I have thought the same thing. I think in some ways our relationship to text is already corrupted. It's already unhealthy, and most people, once they've finished with whatever educational level they're going to get to, actively avoid it as much as they can. And I don't see that as a spectacular educational result. And so maybe we potentially could have a better relationship with writing. Who knows?
That would be terrific final comments for today's event. I think we've exhausted our 90 minutes, but just one brief thought that occurred. I mean, it's about language, it's about writing, but it's also about the future of interpretation, and not just the interpretation of texts or the interpretations of images in my field or of artworks. It's the interpretation of world. And that's, I think, where the bigger problems set in. The way the world is mirrored to us is increasingly out of our control. And that is, I think, a frightening thought. And I don't want to have this end on such a negative thought, which is why I'm admitting one more question. Nico.
Thank you. Thank you for such a wonderful conversation. I use a lot AI on my academic research and many tools. I try to ask Goldberry, said like, is this something that I would publicly share? And I'm like constantly sharing more because I value the potential on democratization that AI may have. But also I'm of course like sharing my anguishes with other like peers, and most of the anguish comes from assessment, because all the tools that students may have and may use with AI are the same things that we can use. And when it comes to assessment, like how do we grade or like assess the quality of this, usually comes like for like effective strategies to things that AI can't do, but that's something that may change easily because maybe the next year it's going to be able to do it, or to do things that are more personal assignments. So that's like an invitation for them to involve. And then like the peer dimension of the sharing the process, I think that it's important because they can recognize if this personal writing is like growing. And my question and my comment, it's like something that all of you mentioned, and it's this like playful and the ludic dimension of writing that all of you feel, all of you have, and all the sharing aspect of writing. Those are things that all these new generations have not felt ever. Like they have not had an opportunity to create like a community for sharing, because like the usual academic times are, or even our classes are not designed to create those spaces to then foster a more ludic and playful relationship with writing. So I think that the assessment and the assessment design dimension and how we promote that playful experience and that different relationship with writing and to discover the full potential that it has, it's one of the main challenge regardless of like the field, like for science, for humanities. I try to do creative outcomes also. So I know that they use ChatGPT, but it's different when they need to actually create something to share with the rest of the class and also like present it. That's one strategy as many, but I wanted to emphasize how we cultivate and how can we foster that playful dimension for them to learn the potential that this has for all of us. And thank you again.
Beautiful. Thank you.
There was just a brief response. I'm so glad that you reminded us of the playfulness that is still an aspect of writing even with AI tools. And as a matter of fact, that is something that I like about AI tools, right? I mean, it's going back to these very basic things that people did in the beginning. So give me a summary of this essay in the tone of, I don't know, the fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm or some pop music star, right? Or I could have prompted my AI, give me a blurb, come up with a blurb for this talk in the form of a limerick. And I mean, that's stuff that I still like to do sometimes to see what it is. Some stuff is really awful, but then you can improve it, right? And play with it. So it's stuff that that's things that I enjoy. And it has a little bit of that magic that we believe is in technology because we don't understand it fully. So that is rephrasing Arthur C. Clarke, the sci-fi writer. But I see that still in there, right? I'm kind of fascinated how quickly AI can spit out things that would take me a long time to think about, right? But it can speed up that creative process as well. So it can be used in a good, in a positive way. So thank you for that.
Thank you all. I think there's reason to continue these conversations, especially about writing and creativity and the potential that AI offers if we work with it in the right way and integrate it into our teaching environment. So I'd love to continue this. I wanted to thank you again, Christoph, and thank you, Goldberry, for joining us, for talking about things that I'd never heard of, and for discussing the key issues that we currently have with AI in the classroom. As always, please come and see us again at the center. I hope that this recording will be posted and made available. So if you want to come back to it and have a look at Christoph's slides, there will be the opportunity to do that. So thanks again, everyone, and happy holidays, I guess.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Same to you.
Bye-bye.